Hey, what is going on, everybody? I'm probably just going to go ahead and get started right away in case you're not watching this on a live stream. I'm going to go find my video real quick, though, so that way I can monitor anybody in the chat. Go to videos. All right. I'm going to mute this. Hooli, how's it going? Sledneck, it's good to see you guys, and on and on. Yeah, I know I was supposed to make this video. I think I said I was going to make it yesterday. But pretty much, I'm going to go through, and we're going to tackle this book together, reading it slowly, looking for anything that stands out. So just to rehash out any, what I covered in my last video the other day, I'm going to read something real quick. Alright? Alright. Fenn says there are 9 clues in the poem, but if you read the book, there are a couple of good hints, and there are a couple of aberrations that live out on the edge. Okay? And then also, get the thrill of the chase and read it. And then go back and read the poem over and over and over again. Then go back and read the book again, but slowly, looking at every little abstract thing that might catch up in your brain. That might be a hint that will help you with the clues. Any part of some is better than no part of any. So, somebody asked Forrest, in your dictionary, what's an aberration? Fenn says, I don't have a dictionary, but my personal definition is something different. I like that word. When I was a kid, there was a commonly used word, creen, and it described the condition a car would get into when it ran into a ditch and the frame twisted a little, preventing the doors from opening. Modern autos are more sturdy, so I guess that word was retired. I can't find it anywhere now. So maybe he's implying that creen was something different, or I know what word he's referencing, and I always heard it as Corrine, not like creen, like C-R-E-A-N, but like Corrine. I don't even know how you would spell it, but maybe like like C-O-R-R-E-A-N. If anybody has ever heard that, maybe it was just the pronunciation from where Corrine, yeah, there you go. See, so somebody else knows what I'm talking about. So is Forrest telling us in that quote right there that creen is something different, because he's telling us it's not correct, but without telling us. And of course, if we go to search for the word creen that he had just set out for us, we're not going to be able to find it either, because it's not the right word. So it's something different. Now, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to go to aberration in the dictionary, right? As a noun, it's a departure from what is normal, usual, or expected. Typically one that's unwelcome, right? So if something abnormal happens to you and you're not really liking it, that would be an aberration, or something that is just like bizarre and completely like unexpected maybe. For biology, a characteristic that deviates from the normal type, so again, something different. All right, for optics, the failure of rays to converge at one focus because of limitations or defects in a lens or mirror. So this was the biggest use I could find for the word aberrations, was talking about light deflection pretty much. So if you have a short focal plane and then a long focal plane, the short focal plane will bend the rays down to the spot that it's trying to focus on, to the point where it's almost like normal. But with the long focal plane, the rays run pretty much parallel to the point that it's trying to focus on, and that's where you have like distortion in the light, or kind of just like a displaced light, if that makes sense. That's the way I understood it anyways. And then but right there, because of limitations or defects in a lens or a mirror. So Forrest says, right in the first part of the book, if any readers over the age of 12 don't see a little of themselves in this mirror, then maybe they deserve another turn. So is he hinting at the defects or limitations of himself? And we'll kind of get into that a little bit. Like I've said since the beginning of my videos, is this book is, if you haven't gotten The Thrill of the Chase yet, you really need to you need to get the book. And the book is pretty deep. You know, it's got some pretty substantial you know, like connections that you can make with it. You know, when I first read it, I read it normally, right? And you know, while reading it normally, I found some parts in there that, you know, I thought were hilarious. I laughed, and I was like, damn, that was pretty good. And then I reread it over and over, and the more times that I read it, the more times I catch the deeper meaning that's in it. And I think that's exactly what Forrest wanted to do. And then in astronomy, the apparent displacement of celestial object from its true position caused by the relative motion of the observer to the object. All right, so in a nutshell, that's an aberration. So I think Forrest's summary of it is something different. Now, if we look at abstract, right, an abstract as an adjective is existing in thought or as an idea, but not having a physical or concrete existence. Now, let's go look at the way that Forrest said it. Okay, get The Thrill of the Chase and read it. Then go back and read the poem over and over and over again. Then go back and read the book again, but slowly, looking at every little abstract thing. All right, so I would say in this sense, it is an adjective, right? It's describing the thing. It's a word that's describing. So if you were to say, like, you know, it was a bright green. Green is the noun, and then bright is the adjective, right? It's enhancing the picture of it. So we have existing in thought or as an idea, but not having a physical or concrete existence. So something that you can think of, but not really be able to prove it, right? And then also relating to abstract art. Now, as a verb, is to consider something theoretically or separately from someone else. And then to extract or remove something. So is he telling us that to look for anything that was removed? You know, something that makes whatever he's saying at the time incomplete. All right, and then this is the biggest one that got me. Make a written summary of an article or a book. So if that's the case, then Forrest, hold on, I'm gonna continue going. So down to noun, right? A summary of the contents of a book, article, or formal speech. So same thing with the verb, and then also pretty much going into the same thing as what the adjective was saying. Means you're putting it into your own thoughts, but it's not really physical. And then an abstract work of art, and then that which is abstract, the theoretical consideration of something. So any abstract thing is the theoretical consideration or spin-off to what we're considering what he's meaning in his book. You know, like to consider the deeper meaning. We're creating a summary of the chapter, of the book, etc. in our own minds. It's not really physical nor concrete, and it's theoretical to us, but that's the type of stuff that we're supposed to be looking for. So it's almost like we're going to read the book and try to prove that that's the abstract thing that Forrest wanted us to see. Meanwhile, in something abstract isn't physical or concrete, you know. It's trying to prove the unprovable, if that makes sense. So I wanted to throw that out there before I get started on this, just so people kind of could figure out, you know, where my logic is at with this. Am I frozen for you guys? Anybody? I just got to refresh the page maybe. I just want to make sure. I am not getting anything on my screen. Okay, that's good to go. Is it good for all of you guys? It's not like slowing down or glitching or anything like that? I don't necessarily know if my... Okay, cool. I wasn't sure if my Wi-Fi was on too. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. I've gone through and I've read everything, and I got little sticky notes in here. I haven't completed it yet, but I've been focusing on, you know, what I'm going to be going through with you guys. And to be fair, you know, there's pretty much what I'm going to be doing is just like I did for my War for Me, right? We're going to be reading this, and then we're going to be putting it into abstract, pretty much creating a summary of our own views and opinions as to what we think that we just read. And to be honest, there is probably some stuff that I'm going to, you know, keep from saying just for, you know, my own search purposes, but I'm not going to hold back too much, and honestly, I think it'll be pretty fun. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, and we'll see how this goes. This will probably be part one of many videos. I have until 9:15 Eastern Standard Time, so that's about 30 more minutes. So we'll see how it goes. All right, so the preface. Oh, and by the way, in order for this to be fair use or whatever, I have to keep it educational, and that means I have to interrupt between reading it, you know, throw in my own thoughts, and then continue reading, right? If I were to read a complete chapter every other video, people could just put all those videos together and create an audiobook, and now I'm having people pursuing after me for freaking copyright, you know, stuff like that. So I'm going to try to avoid all that, try not to piss Forrest off too bad, and yeah. Alright, so the preface. All of the stories that mingle among these pages are as true to history as one man can average out that truth, considering the fact that one of my natural instincts is, is to embellish just a little. Nevertheless, the story about my treasure chest is true, and if it doesn't stir your spirit, then I hope it at least brings a smile in one of your dreams. So right off the bat, he's trying to emphasize to us, these are my stories. They're as true to history, my history, the world history, whatever. They're as true as I can possibly relate them. But I do have a tendency to exaggerate things. So if there's anything in my book that you think that I'm exaggerating or lying about, hey, maybe I am, but I promise you the story of my treasure chest is true. Alright, he says, and please don't fret too much if some of the things I say don't appeal to you. Instead, keep in mind that the temperament of the country was different in the 1930s, when I was a tyke and wimpy hamburgers were a nickel. If it will bother you to read that I shot meadowlarks so my family could have food on the table, then please don't read further. I did that more than once, and candor demands that I admit to being as proud of it today as my father was of me then when I was 8. Please overlook my slight penchant for provocation and realize that all of us are environmentalists to some degree, and me more than most. My churches in the mountains and along the river bottoms where dreams and fantasies alike go to play. Alright, so overlook, right? Overlook is to, you know, to kind of ignore, right? You know, like not let it bother you. Alright, now let's talk about penchant. Penchant is the liking to or tendency to. So he's saying, please ignore my slight tendency for provocation. Alright, what's provocation? We have action or speech that makes others annoyed or angry, and usually deliberately. So, overlook my slight penchant for provocation is saying, please ignore my slight tendency or liking to say stuff that happens to get people riled up or annoyed or angry. Like, I know that I do it, but just ignore it. Alright, varied are the many roads I've traveled to reach my 80 years, and not all have been paved with smiles and accolades. If to be content has been my goal, then I've been successful my share of the time. But that's not to boast about all that happened along the way. Gaining experience wasn't always peaceful, especially during my early years of anxiety. All right, so varied are the many roads I've traveled. So he's talking about his experiences. He's obviously, it's a metaphor pretty much. He's not talking about physical roads, but he's talking about pathways in life. So varied are the many roads I've traveled to reach my 80 years, and not all have been paved with smiles and accolades. So if we look up an accolade, it's award or privilege granted as special honor or acknowledgement of merit or it's praise and admiration. So not all of my pathways that I've taken in life have been admirable or honored upon, or admired at, stuff like that. Pretty much saying like it hasn't all been good times. That's what he's saying, which he lets us know later on. But if to be content has been my goal, then I've been successful my share of the time. But that's not to boast about all that happened along the way. So he's saying, even though his pathways haven't been admired upon or even admired upon for him, like he's pretty much saying, hey, I've had my good times and I've had my bad times, but I've mostly been content throughout my life, right? But that's not to brag. That's not to brag about all of my happy times along the way. Like, hey, I've had good times and I've had bad times, but my memories are mostly of good stuff, but I'm not bragging about it because the roads that I've traveled that weren't paved with smiles and accolades did have some effect on me. All right, and he clarifies it right here. Gaining experience wasn't always peaceful, especially during my early years of anxiety. All right, so the first thing I want to do is hit on this goal, right? If to be content has been my goal. All right, so a goal is the object of ambition or effort towards a desired result, right? It is the distraction of a journey. That's what it is. Let me look that up because it's important later on. Well, what I think is important. I mean, it's not going to find the treasure for you, but an object. Okay, the object of a person's ambition or effort, an aim or desired result. Okay, the destination of a journey, not distraction. Dang, my handwriting sucks. So it's the destination of a journey. But he's just talking about a roadway right here, right? It says, varied are the many roads I've traveled to reach my 80 years. And they've not all been paved with smiles and accolades, but he knows that he's trying to get somewhere, but he believes that he's there, right? Or he was there during this time of writing. Because he says, if to be content has been my goal. So he's saying, if to be happy about life, or, if to, to be comfortable with where I'm at in life has been my goal, then I've been successful. All right. But he's going to hit on that again later on. All right. But he says, especially during my early years of anxiety. All right. So anxiety is worry, nervousness, or unease, typically about an imminent event or uncertain outcome. So what's an imminent event? An imminent event is, growing old, pretty much growing old, having a family, facing death, pretty much that type of stuff, right? The stuff that is like inevitable. There's, you're born and you die, pretty much. That's it, right? So that is the death is the imminent event. So he's saying that he was anxious for that location, all right? And that location, or he's anxious for that event, and that event that he's talking about is the destination of his journey and throughout his journey, he's been content or comfortable the majority of the time. I hope that makes sense what I'm saying. Then he says, I tend to use some words in the dictionary. I tend to use some words that aren't in the dictionary and others that are. I bend a little. My only goal in this endeavor is to talk about a few of my life experiences, and if any readers over the age of 12 don't see a little of themselves in this mirror, then maybe they deserve another turn. All right, so again, a goal is the object of ambition or effort towards a desired result or the destination of a journey. And then if we look up endeavor, an endeavor is an attempt to achieve a goal. It's an enterprise or an undertaking. If we apply that undertaking thought to the inevitable event, so he's saying if the goal is to reach his end goal, and his goal and his endeavor are the same thing, and the whole point, or the only thing that he tried to accomplish during meeting that point, the point that he was anxious about was to inspire some people, bring some smiles to their face, and also to be comfortable with where he's at in his life. Then he says, this book is my 9th in 26 years of casually recounting the things I enjoy most. My books have to write themselves or I struggle. This one did. All right, so besides my little interjection, right, now we have to look at the abstract. We just read this preface. Now we're going to go look at the abstract, just something that I wrote out the other day. So Forrest is telling the truth in his book, even if he has the tendency to exaggerate. Even though he tends to crack jokes and make fun, he doesn't mean any offense. Even though, oh crap, let me go back to this one more thing that I said in here. He says, all of us are environmentalists to some degree, and me more than most. An environmentalist is a person who is concerned with or advocates the protection of environment, or it's a person that believes the environment has the primary influence on the development of a person over their heretics, pretty much. And so he's saying like the environment that I love, right? A person who is concerned with or advocates for the protection of the environment, which he does in this book. He talks about the clearing out of land and all that. But he's also saying that that land that he advocates for protection so much is the same land that has influenced himself, or that has influenced him, and is the reason why, and has made him the man that he is to be now, right? So I'm going to read that line just real quick one more time. Right here. Please overlook my slight penchant for provocation. This is right after he talked about, shooting meadowlarks and stuff. So some people might find that offensive, right? And this is when he says, please overlook my slight penchant for provocation and realize that all of us are environmentalists to some degree, and me more than most. And we know that that's what he means. We know that he's saying it had the biggest influence on my life, because the very next line, he says, my church is in the mountains and along the river bottoms where dreams and fantasies alike go to play. So the church, is where he finds, a church is a place where people go to find like higher purposes, right? Like a meaning to life, to find faith, to find hope, and to just, feel comfortable with themselves, or attempt to feel comfortable by prayer or seeking higher things or whatever. And we'll get into that. So going back over to this, he says pretty much what I just said. Even though he shot animals as a kid, he doesn't want the reader to be disgusted and only did so to eat. He credits the way he turned out to the environment and the experience he had as a child, and not to his upbringing. He found happiness in the mountains and river bottoms. He had both good and bad experiences, and has had a mostly happy and average life, but won't brag because of the bad times too. He was always uneasy and nervous with the outcome of life, and his only goal is to make people relate. Pretty much, and pretty much what he said during my early years of anxiety. And the very first thing that we're going to read in the next part is going to add into that. And then we have his quote. Life is a game of poker and happiness is the pot. So you are trying to win happiness, right? I think everybody's just been, reading this and like, oh, that's a clever little saying or whatever. But listen to what it's really saying. Life is a game of poker and happiness is the pot. So in your life, you're trying to win happiness, right? You're trying to win contentment, which is why Fenn says the key word is contentment. If you can find it, everything else has fallen into place. Fate deals you 4 cards and a joker, and you play whether you like it or not. So you're trying to find happiness, right? And the 4 cards that you get are decently, they might not be bad, right? You get the hand that you were dealt, pretty much, is what he's saying. And then you get that joker in there. It's the wild card. And it's that decision of what are you going to do with that wild card to increase the odds of your hand in order to win the happiness. All right? I hope that makes sense. All right, excuse me. I'm going to hit my vape real quick. And take a drink. All right. So, going into the remaining part of the preface. So it says, well, I'm almost 80 and I think that's so funny. Oh, I don't mean it's funny because I'm almost 80, but it's funny because I said it that way. I could have just said I'm 79 so I could be a year younger, but I don't care anyway. Over the years, more important things came in and out of my life, so I never much cared even then. In younger days, I didn't know where I wanted to go, but it always seemed kind of important at the time that I get there. All right, so recap that. He says, I'm almost 80, but I could have easily said that I'm 79 to be a year younger, which, a lot of people might do that. But he's saying he doesn't care, he doesn't care about age, because more important things throughout his life had popped up and distracted him from the aging process, right? And then he says, in younger days, I didn't know where I wanted to go, but it always seemed kind of important at the time that I get there. So we already know, not right now he's talking about going somewhere. Well, we can also talk about that being his endeavor, right? And he, in the previous page, he had anxiety about it because he knew where he was going, right? He's going to the imminent event, right? And that imminent event is getting old and, getting old and slowing down and everything, which is pretty much exactly what he's saying in the words above that I had just read. I'm almost 80 and I think that's so funny. I don't mean it's funny because I'm almost 80, but it's funny because I said it that way. I could have just said I'm 79 so I could be a year younger, but I don't care anyways. So he's saying he's fine with getting old. When he was younger, he didn't know that he would be okay, with getting old and slowing down and all that. But more important things came to distract him, right? And he talks about some of those important things that kind of changed his thought process. Then he says, then all of a sudden I started getting bald. Just a little at first, so it wasn't a big deal. I remembered that the same thing happened to President Eisenhower, and he explained it was because his brains were pushing his hair out. I figured that the same thing must be happening to me, so I felt all right with it. So he's looking at other people that went through the same process, right? Like other good people. Like Eisenhower was a good president, and he stuck up for the people. He tried warning the American people. He tried like stopping corruption in the government to a certain extent, right? So he's a good person, and obviously it was during a period where Forrest was growing up, so he looked up to him in some sort of aspect, right? Not in a personal aspect, but he was aware of who he was and the influence that he had on the country during his upbringing and all that. And so that's why he's like, hey, you know what? Not only is this guy a good guy, but what he just said was pretty clever too. I think it's funny. I'm going to use it. I feel all right with getting old. Right? And then he says, then my hair turned gray. Okay, white. But that problem was easily solved by just telling people I was dyeing it, and they never knew the difference. So pretty much he's looking at any excuse possible to ignore the fact that he's aging and to try to fool other people along the way. He says, it doesn't matter much to me if I get old, especially since I'm already there. Actually, the only thing that's old about me is my body. My mind stays at about 13. To help my self-image, I take showers only at night so I can't see my age as much. When my wife built our house, she put a skylight in my bathroom flat above the shower. It was a design deficiency, but she didn't have to stand there and see, so she didn't care. So he's saying, obviously he's saying what everybody knows. He's, how do I want to word it? I just lost my train of thought. But he's saying, like, even though my body is old, like, my mind feels young. I'm still young as could be in my mind. But even though I'm young in my mind, every time I look at my old body, I get, self-conscious or become aware to the fact that I'm getting old. So he decides to only take showers at night so he can't see his body. But the issue with it was his wife put the bathroom flat, put a skylight in above the bathroom flat. Now, why this would matter at nighttime? Hold on. We might have just found an aberration. So, my opinion of a skylight is a big old hole in the ceiling with a window covering it with natural light coming in. Right? That's fair to say. But if you only take showers at night, why does the light matter? Why does the light that's coming through the skylight even matter? So yeah, let's look that up real quick. I hope that makes sense what I'm saying. A window installed in a roof or ceiling. Just like I said, so if it's nighttime, there would be no difference. He would still be showering at nighttime. I'm curious to what your guys' thoughts are about that for sure. But he says it was a design deficiency, but she didn't have to stand there and see, so she didn't care. And I think this is kind of twofold. He's saying that the process of aging is a design deficiency on, the higher creator's part, and it's a design deficiency on his wife's part, just because he didn't want it in there. But it really doesn't make much sense to me why he's bringing that up. So yeah, I am going to remember that part. All right, some people can live with old age. My dear friend Eric Sloan was a painter and writer of large note. When he got to 79, like me, he said it was okay. He wrote about 50 books, and they were all clever. In this chapter right here, he mentions clever over and over and over. All right, he wrote about 50 books, and they were all clever. He always told me he was going to write one more book, title it 80, and then die. He was funny like that. Oh, I don't mean he was funny because he said he was going to die, but funny because he had all that figured out. Now, the crazy thing about Eric Sloan is he really wrote one more book, titled it 80, and then he died. So Forrest is laughing about it because he really did have all of that figured out. That's exactly what happened. He said that his habit of never dating his letters or paintings was not a careless oversight, but rather a deep personal superstition that ignoring time itself might be a secret technique to delay aging. Alright, let's look at that for a minute. Some people can live with old age. My dear friend Eric Sloan pretty much told me, Eric Sloan told him that it was alright, right? He cracked jokes about getting old. He said exactly what he was going to do. He had all of it figured out. So Forrest is taking in this knowledge, just like he did with Eisenhower, talking about his brains pushing his hair out, and how just telling people that you were dyeing your hair gray. I mean, everybody can tell, like, gray hair is gray hair, but hey, if that's what he had to do to make himself feel better, then it worked for him, right? But Eric Sloane pretty much told him the same thing. Now he said that his habit of never dating his letters or paintings was not a careless oversight, but rather a deep personal superstition that ignoring time itself might be a secret technique to delay aging. Now, I think that Forrest did, pretty much did the same thing with, oh man, hold on. Okay. Oh yeah, so Forrest did the same thing that Eric Sloane had done, but just by lying about it, right? Or by just ignoring it. And I think that might also be a hint towards, towards the postmarks that are throughout the book. All the postmarks that are wrong. If you can line up the date that the day actually fell, or that the day of the week actually fell on that date, find what year that is. Maybe that was a way that Forrest lied to himself about his age, right, to feel younger. Just like he makes up excuses like his brain's pushing his hair out, how he was dyeing his hair gray, how he only takes showers at night. That's Forrest's secret technique to delay aging, and to think of himself as a 13-year-old, right? That's the way that he's staying young. So he just completely ignores the fact that he has an aging body and just thinks young thoughts. Might be a secret technique to delay aging. He probably thought that up when he was about 15. So Forrest was a 13-year-old in his mind, and Eric Sloane was a 15-year-old in his mind. Or at least that's how Forrest looks at it. Because remember, my mind stays at about 13, and he's saying he probably thought that up when he was about 15. So if he thought that up when he was 15, of never dating his letters or paintings, then maybe Forrest is implying that he's been following that logic since around the time that he was 15. Like the whole Peter Pan, I never want to grow up type stuff, because growing up sucks. Alright, later in Who's Who, he said his birth date was 1910 instead of 1905 and hoped his friends would forgive him that foolish prank. I wish I could be clever like that. When he turned 80, he gave himself a surprise birthday party because he was surprised he'd lived that long. He died 2 weeks later while standing on a street corner in Manhattan, waiting for the light to change. I'll never get over that. Who knows how long he might have lived if he hadn't had to wait for the light. Life is like that sometimes, and death is always too harsh. Alright, so died on the street corner while waiting for a light. This means that he slowed down and age caught up with him, which is why, or life caught up with him, if you will, which is why Forrest says, life is like that sometimes, and death is always too harsh, because death is always accompanying, life, right? Life and death, they go hand in hand, and you can't run from life for forever, and eventually life and age, as soon as you slow down, life and age is going to catch up to you, and, death is going to come right along with it. So he says, life is like that, so he says, life is like that sometimes means that life sneaks up on you. Death is always too harsh, meaning that death doesn't care if you're ready or not. So going back to this, and then I got to wrap it up, I'm going to get to, finish this page right here. Okay, right here. Life for Eric was just a rule of thumb anyway, and he was philosophical about it all. Now, if we look at rule of thumb, it's a practical or approximate way to measure something, a general principle developed through experiences, not theory. It's an estimation. So Forrest is saying that Forrest is saying that Eric thought, life is just an estimate, an approximation anyways, and lived through experiences. But this is the biggest thing that got me. And he was philosophical about it all. Alright, so philosophical is to have knowledge, philosophical is the love of knowledge and wisdom, the study of proper behavior in search for wisdom. So it's philosophical is to figure out the reason for life, pretty much, right? To question everything, to figure out, to find the knowledge and gain the wisdom, and to figure life out, right? And right, the previous page, Forrest told us that Eric had all that figured out. So I believe Forrest when he says that Eric Sloan was philosophical, right? If you haven't already done so, or if you haven't looked into what philosophical is, or to be a philosopher, or that type of stuff, I really think you should look it up, because it's there's some pretty interesting stuff in there. He was married 5 times, and he always said he married housekeepers because when he divorced, they kept the house. All right. Okay. I thought I wrote something down for the... Okay. All right. One more thing about philosophical... Okay. Devoted to the study... I wrote 2 definitions. I only read the one. All right. Devoted to the study of fundamental nature of knowledge, reality, and existence. So devoted to the study of existence and gaining knowledge and questioning what reality is. And then a second definition, showing a calm attitude towards disappointments and difficulties. So being calm with the disappointments in life, the difficult things in life, and just having an all-around good idea of what the existence of life is all about, and questioning reality and all that. And let me go back to where I thought I had written something down about this housekeeper thing, but I didn't. I love that quote though. But being almost 80 gives me a lot of time to think about regrets and other things. So what is that other things, right? That's the question. Just like earlier, it said more important things came in and out of my life. What were those more important things that came in and out of his life? What were the other things that he thought about on top of the regrets that he thought about? Now, who would you rather have working on your car? A man who just graduated from 4 years of mechanic school, or a guy who has been working on broken cars for 4 years? My father said that to me one day with no one else around. Can you believe that? He was just standing there by the car doing something important, and he said it to me out of the blue. He was really smart that way. Now, if you notice, Forrest is telling us that out of the blue, right? It didn't even belong there. He was married 5 times, and he said he always married housekeepers because when he divorced, they kept the house. But being almost 80 gives me a lot of time to think about regrets and other things. Who would you rather have working on your car, right? Just randomly throws it in there. So it's definitely something to think about, right? And he says he was standing there by the car doing something important. Now, every time that you see something in the book that means that says important or other synonyms for important, it's time to pay attention. He said that to me out of the blue. He was really smart that way. We both knew I wasn't going to college. Me, because I didn't think I could make it, and him, because he didn't think I could make it. I always listened closely when he talked and told me things. So whenever Forrest's dad is talking or saying something, you need to listen closely. Sometimes he would ask me a really important question that I didn't know how to answer and make it seem all right. I'd just try to shake my head yes and no at the same time, but that was hard to do. Occasionally, it's wise for the fox to dress like the hound. So mostly, I stood there and tried to look interested. All right, so a little bit about that. All right, so who would you rather have working on your car? A guy that graduated from 4 years of mechanic school, or a guy who has been working on broken cars for 4 years? Now, I always read that differently, right? And it's because of the way that it's worded, but you kind of got to take a philosophical approach and kind of look at every way that the word is. Because if you really think about it, who would you rather have working on your car? A guy who graduated from 4 years of mechanic school, or a guy that has been working on broken cars for 4 years? Now, the way that it's worded makes it sound like he's been working on broken cars for 4 years, which begs the question of why the hell ain't they fixed yet? Whereas the other guy went to school. But so that might be one approach, right? To just question it. But the next thing, but there's a deeper meaning to this. Okay, so Forrest's dad asked that to Forrest, and he didn't know how to answer at the time. But his father knew how to make him feel okay and how to make him think about the future. So Forrest didn't know how to answer it at the time, right? And that's why he says sometimes my father would ask me things that I didn't know how to answer but make me feel all right with it, right? They never went, or Forrest's dad knew that he wasn't going to make it to college, and Forrest knew that he wasn't going to make it through college. So it's a question of, what are you going to do with your life? So Fenn's dad knew that he couldn't get through college, but he knew that he would be okay because he was smart and resourceful. So Forrest's dad had seen something in Forrest, right? Whether it was his ingenuity, his imagination, his resourcefulness, his drive, his entrepreneur type personality, and that's why Forrest's dad would bring these questions up to Forrest, right? Kind of taking his own little philosophical approach to him. All right, and then Forrest says, sometimes it's wise for the fox to dress like the hound. All right, so that's pretty much saying for the hunted to dress like the hunter, or for the uneducated to act smart, right? Or so in other words, he couldn't answer, so he acted like he knew what his dad meant at the time, right? Forrest, at the time of writing this, obviously Forrest knows, but looking back as a kid, he didn't know what his dad meant, and that's why he says, occasionally it's wise for the fox to dress like the hound, so just act like you know what your dad's talking about, like, yeah, sure, Dad, I totally know what you mean, and just try to look interested in the conversation. No kid wants to be harassed or talked to about their future or ask these, these questions that make you think and stuff. They just want to be on the move and go do something or whatever, but, the something that I think is important is what was the really important thing that Forrest's dad was doing by the car, right? And what was that really important thing that he was doing that made him think up the question to ask Forrest of who would you rather have working on your car? Now, obviously, you would probably assume that he was working on his car and Forrest happened to be, out there, and Forrest's dad just, hey, who would you rather have working on your car? But I really think that this was a way for Forrest's dad to approach Forrest, right? And there was I'll have to look it up, but there's pretty much two teaching techniques. One is to just pound the information in, right? There's actual words for what I'm talking about, or the blank method and the blank method. I can't think of it right now. All right, it kicked me off. Marty Bird, I'm so glad that you brought that up. I'm not going to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it, but you're obviously... All right, for some reason, it keeps kicking me out, and I don't know why, so I'm probably going to end this. But pretty much, Forrest's dad was trying to draw the answers out of him, to make him think, to make him find the answers himself, right? And Forrest's dad was a teacher, so he obviously knew about this method, right? To question a child and try to prompt the answers from them, try to make them find the answers themselves, right? Try to make them be a problem solver and stuff like that, as opposed to the other method that's just, throwing information at them and telling them what's right and telling them what's wrong. Like, my course syllabus and my college tells me to tell you that this, and this is correct, and anything that you say besides that is wrong. Pretty much that's the other method. So But yeah, I'm gonna hop off. I'm 10 minutes beyond my end time right now. See, I got 10 likes on there. I appreciate it. 48 viewers. That's awesome. You know, I'm starting to get into these higher view counts, so I do appreciate it. You know, it's better than getting on doing these live streams and then you have, you know, 15, 20 people in there viewing or whatever. You know, kind of everybody just monitoring from a difference, not really subscribing or liking or interacting or anything like that. So the fact that I have all you guys in here, I really do appreciate it. If you are one of the 65% of my viewers that aren't subscribed to me in this chat room right now, or even if you're watching it at a later date, please hit that subscribe button so I can grow this channel a little bit. Obviously, I can't grow a channel without you guys, so you guys are, you know, the support that I need. So if you like this content, you know, please subscribe, hit the like button, let your like-minded friends know about it. If you want to email me, fentreasurethoughts@gmail.com, and I will try to be back on as soon as possible with continuing on to the first grade chapter. But other than that, have a good night, you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. Later.